Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Lucretia Cook, but you can call me Dr. LaLa. Welcome back to another episode of the Revolve Podcast, where grief and loss are a journey, not a final destination. Today's episode is very close to my heart because it's about something that often feels unattainable when we've experienced grief, and that is joy, right? A lot of times when you've experienced grief, our worlds shift, right? And they shift because of the loss, the trauma, the heartbreak. And joy can feel so far and it feels so far away. And if you've ever felt guilty about smiling, laughing, or just simply breathing without crying, you are not alone, right? And this episode isn't about dismissing your pain, it's not about letting it go. It's about expanding your capacity to feel again, to experience joy again, and to believe that happiness and joy are not a betrayal of your grief. It's not a betrayal of the life you thought you were going to have. It's not a betrayal of the loss of the people that you've loved and lost, right? But it's a sign that healing can begin. And so, one of the reasons that grief feels so unattainable is because our emotional baseline gets shifted, right? Because usually, before we experience grief and loss, we normally reside in what's usually a happy medium, right? And we have these moments where we have maybe a little sadness here or there. You know, you have things that happen, but you're able to just move past them. Unfortunately, when we're grieving, that ability to just move past it doesn't happen as quickly, right? And so joy feels scary, right? Even when you have those moments, it feels scary. It feels like it's safe. It's not safe to be happy. It's not safe to have joy. And why does it feel that way? Because most of the time, we feel like as soon as I get to that space where I'm happy again, the other shoe's gonna drop, right? And then you might also have guilt whispering in your ear, you shouldn't be happy right now. You shouldn't have joy right now, right? It's too soon. You just lost your loved one. It's just been 3 months. What's there to smile about? You just went through that divorce. It's only been 2 or 3 months. What's there to smile about? You've been struggling with infertility for years. What's there to smile about, right? But Romans 12 and 2 encourages us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, and that includes our capacity for joy. Whew, I know, right? Because it's something that most of the time we don't even have to think about it. It's not even something that we consider until it is, right? Until we've experienced that deep hurt that takes us to this space of wondering whether or not we're going to ever experience happiness again, if we're ever going to have joy again, if we're ever going to be able to smile again, right? It's when we get to those spaces that we begin to actually think about what happiness and joy looks like, right? And I get it. I've been there, right? I've walked through loss. I've parented through grief. I've partnered through grief. I've done all of those things, all while trying to hold space for everybody else and trying to figure out how to hold space for myself too. And there came a time when I had to ask myself, can I allow joy without feeling like I've abandoned the people or the parts of me that I lost? Right? And think about it. How many of us have that concern that having joy, being happy again, is an indicator that those things from before no longer matter? Or that that's the perception that people are going to have? That you moved on too quick, that you didn't ever care in the first place, right? And that wrestle is real, especially when you're called to be strong and nurturing, but your heart still hurts. Your heart is still tender and bruised, right? But here's what I want you to know: God's healing doesn't erase all of these things, right? But it renews. It's in this space that He can renew us, right? And again, this is where faith and therapy can be a bridge to that healing. Faith and therapy can be a bridge to having joy again, right? Faith tells us that joy is our portion. And therapy tells us that it's a nervous system repair. Yeah. Because our nervous systems get rewired when we're grieving, when we've experienced extreme loss or pain or trauma. It causes rewiring in our nervous systems, right? And so together, faith and therapy allow us to be able to feel again. But here's the thing: joy is something that has to be practiced. We have to seek out opportunities to experience it sometimes. Right? And we've talked about that before, about how important it is when you've experienced grief and loss to go back to doing things that bring you joy. Finding things to do to pull you out of that dark space, right? It's important that we remember that we're worthy of joy. Because I think sometimes we get lost. We get lost in that darkness, in that pain. And so I think it's that it's important that we remember that you're worthy of joy. And you don't have to choose between pain and happiness, right? You don't have to choose between the two. Although pain is a part of life, happiness and joy is our portion too, right? And therapy teaches us how to hold it without fear. And I get it. Sometimes joy feels fragile. It does. Because, like I said, there's a part of us, even in those moments of happiness, who's wondering, when's the other shoe gonna drop? If I allow myself to enjoy this moment, It's just a matter of time before something else bad happens, right? And it's normal to think that way. And so we have to be intentional about reframing those thoughts. Because again, healing is a process and it's not a linear process. It's not a 1, 2, 3 ABC type of thing and it's done and it's over. Unfortunately, most times it just doesn't work that way, right? Because again, grief rewires our nervous system. A lot of times it makes us hypervigilant. And here's the truth about that, right? Being hypervigilant is a protective mechanism. It's the way our brains protect us. And sometimes that can really be a good thing. But in this instance, and we're waiting for the next wave of loss, right? It's preventing us from moving forward. And here's the thing about joy, it demands that we be present and in the moment, right? And I know sometimes after you've been through something really traumatic, that feels unsafe. That's a scary place to be, right? But listen, you're allowed to feel joy. You're allowed to recover, right? And everybody isn't going to get it. There are always going to be people judging. There are always going to be people saying whatever they're going to say, right? Let them. Because one thing I've learned in my time on this earth is that people are going to believe what they want to believe. Period. People are going to believe what they want to believe, so let them. Don't allow what other people think prevent you from pursuing joy, from pursuing your healing, right? Give yourself permission to feel again. Like I said, you're not betraying your grief. Having joy isn't abandoning the people that you've loved. It's not abandoning the people that you've lost. It's not. You're allowed to do that. So give yourself that grace and that space. Right? You're allowed to. You're allowed to breathe without apologizing. Don't apologize for pursuing happiness. Don't apologize for pursuing joy. Because your healing journey doesn't mean that you're forgetting everything from the past. It just means that you're remembering, but you're carrying it with less pain. Because here's another truth. Healing doesn't mean that the pain goes away. Can we talk about that? Healing doesn't mean that the pain goes away. It doesn't mean that you'll never have a moment where you don't miss your loved one. It doesn't mean that you won't regret that things didn't work out the way that you thought they would. It doesn't mean that those things never come up again. Healing just means that you learn how to carry it better. You're carrying it in a way that it doesn't consume you anymore. Now it's a part of your life, not your entire life, right? It's just a part of the journey. It's not the focus anymore. But it may still come up from time to time. And so it's during those times where we have to be really intentional, right? About finding ways to practice joy. And sometimes it's a little thing like lighting a candle, right? And just sitting and relaxing in its ambiance. Just relaxing at the end of the day. Or if you're missing your loved one, play their favorite song and think on some of the joy and the good times that you had with them. Or even putting on your favorite song and dancing until you get tired, right? Naming tiny wins out loud. You hadn't gotten out of bed in 2 days, but you got up today. That's a win, right? Pat yourself on the back for getting up today. Create what I like to call joy circles. Connect with those people who don't make you feel guilt and shame about pursuing joy again. Right? Who want to laugh with you, who want to be able to experience joy and happiness with you, who want to be with you on your journey to healing, right? Begin a gratitude practice. Start with being thankful for one thing. It could be as simple as when you wake up in the morning, God, I thank you for allowing me to wake up this morning. Just that one moment of gratitude in the mornings could change the trajectory of your day, right? And then, of course, you can always use therapeutic tools like positive affirmations, journaling with prompts like, today, joy looked like. I went out for ice cream. That's what joy looked like today. Or I can hold grief and joy together by thinking about my loved one and remembering the good times, but also giving myself the space and grace to cry if necessary in that moment. Because joy isn't the absence of sorrow, right? It's the ability to hold both without losing yourself. Because joy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft and subtle. It could just be that realization that, you know what? I didn't cry today. This is the first time that I haven't cried in weeks, right? So practice joy just like we practice prayer with intentionality and expectation, right? And in those moments where you begin to feel guilty about moving forward, remember that you're not wrong, right? You're not betraying your grief by moving forward. You're not. You're breathing through it. And you're becoming the best version of yourself through it. Right? Isaiah 61:3 tells us to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning. Let God give you that oil. It's not something you have to earn. You just have to receive it. He said he would give us beauty for ashes. And as ugly as some of the things we go through are, God can make something beautiful from it, right? You just have to have the courage to keep going, right? And I know it's hard sometimes, but you can do this. You can. You can do this. And just like with Job, your healing could be the catalyst and hope for someone else, right? When you reclaim joy, you make space for someone else to believe that they can too, right? Because whether you know it or not, people are watching. And you may be planting seeds for someone else. And you have absolutely no clue. But someone else is watching. I cannot tell you how many times I've had people ask me, how do you do this? How are you still smiling? How is it that you haven't fallen apart? Oh, wow. I never knew any of that was happening. Right? Because do you know there are people carrying things that you have absolutely no idea about? And folks are watching. Folks are watching how you carry. And a lot of folks are using you as the blueprint, right? They are. So give yourself permission to feel joy. Give yourself permission to move forward. And when guilt tries to butt into your business, tell him to move around because you're on a mission, right? You're allowed to feel joy, even if you're still healing. And remember, two things can be true. Joy and grief can and do exist in the same space, and that's okay. It's okay. It happens. Breathe through it and remember that weeping endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Joy is coming, and you are worthy of restoration. It's not proof that you've moved on, but it is proof that God is working and that He's not forgotten about you. You're worthy. Keep going. And so until next time, keep choosing healing. Keep choosing joy. I love y'all. Bye.